We're going to try a little logic here for just a very short moment. The It is well known that the United States has 20% of the world's population and well over 70, almost 80% of the world's prisoners, depending on which numbers we use and whether the Chinese are being honest and whether the Russians are being honest. The But the question is, how did we get here, and what is the definition of a political prisoner? For example, beginning in the late 80s and straight through until about 5 years ago, um, there was a big push to be what's called tough on crime. And that meant that you criminalize more and more activities. You make them penal offenses, in other words, offenses that can result in prison time. And then you increase the prison time that is assumed for those offenses. And then you make the possibility of parole less available to individuals who are in prison for any number of nonviolent or offenses. And then you make prosecutors have all the options within a courtroom, and of course enter into confessions that each and every one are written by prosecutors. These are not confessions that a person who is accused of a crime goes, "Oh yes, I did it, let me write the confession out." No, no, no. These are confessions that prosecutors write and then say, "Wouldn't you like to sign this?" Now, naturally, you don't have to sign it, but if you don't sign it, then we're going to push for an extra 15 years onto your term. Wouldn't you like to sign it? There's a chance we may or may not win going to court, but if we win, it will be an extra 15 years for you. And almost anyone who's accused of anything, and anyone, dear listener, can be accused of anything. An accused individual doesn't have the money, doesn't have the wherewithal, and can more often afford to spend a certain amount of time locked up than they can afford to be away from their family for a decade or more. But here's the point. It's called the justice system, and that is being so generous. Legal system might be far more accurate. If a person is going in and they have done some act of depravity, whatever it may be, large or small, okay? Say they've done some act of depravity, and offended justice demands 5 months being locked up for whatever that act that they did, whatever it may be. But the prosecutor says, we need to send a message. Well, to the extent that that person is prosecuted based on sending a message, to that extent, justice has been abandoned and advertising has been promoted. Because, of course, you can send a message in a various types of way. In the best way to send a message is to have justice done on perpetrators and transgressors. But you can put up a billboard. Probably be a lot more effective than this individual who no one is ever going to hear about except for their family. Shoot, they can't afford legal counsel. They've got a public defender who's overworked and is just going to probably tell them the right thing to do, given the legal system, to sign the plea agreement. But here's the important thing. When a justice system decides to send a message rather than pursuing justice, then to that extent, it is no longer a justice system, and it has lost its credibility as a justice system. But the problem is, it isn't just sending a message. It is people running for office saying that they're going to be tough on crime. Crime, after it is committed, is a past tense event. It is impossible to be tough on crime. You can only be tough on people. The people, and usually very people living in pretty desperate poverty, um, because during the process of their indictment and the time they've spent locked up while awaiting trial, they haven't made any money, and so they can't afford representation. To the extent that you have a action that you have greatly expanded the punishment for that far, far above and beyond what justice demands, to that extent, you are, okay, say something requires a 4-month prison term and you make it a 4-year prison term. Then for 3 years and 8 months, you have imprisoned an innocent individual. That's logic. If a prosecutor says, I'm going to send a message, and so I'm going to triple this person's recommended punishment, a sentence. Well, to that extent, for those extra 2 years, if it's a 1 year and you triple it to 3 years, for those 2 years, you are imprisoning an innocent individual. And that is why we have so many millions, 2 million, anyway, depends on how you count, the individuals locked up in the United States. So very, very many. In my opinion, it also gives us in this country a civic orgasm whenever we lock someone up. Oh, there's an evildoer. We're gonna lock him up. It's just a wonderful feeling of superiority. And look at the way prisoners are depicted in print and in movies. My goodness, I was watching one just a couple of days ago. It's a wonderful, wonderful show. Ernest Saves Christmas. Yeah, my wife and I had a lot of fun. And then we watched one last night called The Big Year. Really enjoyed that. Steve Martin, Owen Wilson, wonderful time. But Ernest Saves Christmas, of course, they depicted the individuals sitting in the prison, and they all looked the same, nasty individuals. And